walks around without being shady. Who knows the values, who's gone through trials. Her smiles are captured from mouth to mouth. It's not the size of her thighs she worries about, but the pride she thrives to keep that drive. That cinnamon twist, that cinnamon twist, that cinnamon twist. Ladies, can you feel me? That cinnamon twist, that cinnamon twist, that cinnamon twist.
Well, hello, it is your girl Tasha, known to the world as the Tasha Carpenter, but everybody calls me your girl Tasha because when you hang with me, it is like you are hanging with your girl. So in the studio, guys, returning, I'm so excited in her official capacity as Prince George's County State's Attorney. We have Mrs. Lovely Aisha Braveboy. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me back, Tasha.
Welcome. So I was excited because I wanted to bring you back to give you the opportunity to talk about your first, basically it's 90 days have gone by really quick, right?
Absolutely. Well, it's a long 90 days, I can tell you that, but I'm looking forward to 90 more.
All right.
This is a wonderful job. It's a hard job. It's a tough job. It's a very serious job. But I can tell you that there's no other job I'd want right now than State's Attorney for Prince George's County. So my first 90 days, we've been able to really do a full assessment of the office. The first thing I did was meet with each and every staff person in my office. Attorneys, I met with the victim witness coordinators, the administrative assistants, the paralegals, everyone who makes the office work. And really got their thoughts, their opinions of the office, ways that they thought the office should run more efficiently. And we've been able to implement some of their suggestions, which I've been very honored to do as the manager of the office, being able to have my employees be a part of the change of the office, I think is so empowering for them, and it's been very helpful to me.
Okay, well, that's awesome, guys. I see y'all coming on. We want to get you to share and invite. And I don't want to make any assumptions about our viewers.
Sure.
Some people don't know what the state's attorney does or how important the position is. So can you educate them on exactly?
Sure. Well, my office, we have two main functions. Number one, we are the top prosecutors in our county, so we prosecute all of the state level crimes in Prince George's County. We're also the top law enforcement agency in the county as well, so we have a responsibility to be strategic in helping to keep our community safe. And so in that respect, we work with our law enforcement partners, the police department, the sheriff's department, Department of Corrections, and others involved in law enforcement to develop strategies to keep our crime going in the right direction, which is down, and make our community safer.
Okay, and you guys are, like you said, the top law enforcement agency. So now I'm wondering, I remember when you came on the show before, and of course everybody came on and they talked about what their priorities were on their platform and what they were campaigning for. What I want to know is, how much has changed, or how much were you able to actually focus on, or did you have to realign with your priorities? And if so, what are the differences?
No, my priorities from the campaign were number one was to really change the way in which we administered justice for our juveniles in Prince George's County. And I've been able in this short time to really change the way that unit works. It's no longer simply a prosecuting unit, our juvenile unit. It is now a comprehensive full-service juvenile justice unit which provides diversion opportunities. We are also in the process of, and I think we'll be the first in the state, we will be hiring a full-time medical director to assist us with making decisions about juvenile cases. Because what's important to know about the juvenile system is the goal of that system is what is in the best interest of the child. That is the standard in the juvenile cases. And so we have many of our young people who, and we've talked about this before, are suffering from mental health issues, have substance abuse issues. have been traumatized as children, and they grow up in environments where they are not whole. And so we should provide in our system of justice an opportunity to make our children whole and fully rehabilitated. So that unit is working extremely well, and we're going to continue to grow the activities of that unit. The other thing I mentioned coming, here my last time when I was running, I talked about the importance of having a community that operates that has elected officials and police officers that operate with integrity. And I developed a public integrity unit. That unit addresses our police use of force cases as well as our public corruption cases. And recently, that unit indicted a police officer who we believed beat a unarmed suspect who was in the front seat of a police cruiser being detained. And so we were able to we believe, show that probable cause existed, that the officer was used excessive force in that case. And so we are going to take that case to trial, and we hope that we get justice for the community. But again, we are not afraid to hold our partners in law enforcement accountable. That's our job. That's what we have to do. But in that respect, we are also working very hard on training and providing opportunities for our officers to understand constitutional policing and make better decisions when they encounter our citizens and residents.
Okay, so it's funny that you would bring that up, because some of that comes in line with, I got some questions that came in from email, Facebook requests and stuff, and one of them actually, to start off with, is like 3 questions along that line. One start off by saying, basically, I received a lot of multiple questions regarding Prince George's County officers having a Bill of Rights that many in the community view as protecting the police more than it protects the citizens. It has been expressed that the community has been hurt by these type of cases where defendants have been prosecuted with false charges just to be convicted. The viewers want to know what is being done to correct these preventable occurrences, and what are your thoughts regarding the allegations of corruption within the Prince George's County Police Department?
Well, that's a lot of questions. So I'll start with your first one. The law.
I'm sorry, we have a call to come in, and Cole's got to come in first.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, we're going to get this. Hold on. WBGR, hanging with your girl Tasha. Who's calling, and where are you calling from?
Hey, Tasha. This is Lynette calling from Charlotte, North Carolina. How you doing?
Fine,
Great
you.
show.
Thank you. North Carolina in the house.
Yes, by way of DMV. So, but I have a question. How is the county now, for Prince George's County, handling, not slumlords, but squatters? If there's information, who do we contact? And if there's some old cases that are people that are living in squatting homes, how do we get the information to your office if we have information, dealing with squatters?
Well, so squatters can fall into 2 different categories. Some individuals are knowingly going into homes and sort of taking them over because they may be abandoned.
Are you able to hear her, Lynette?
What I was going to do is I was going to go ahead and hang up so I could hear, because I'm kind of like in a little bad area. But this information where I can get some information to her of a prior case that's still going on, and there's some things that I know that's been unrecognized, but I would like to talk to her about it. So I'm gonna hang up. Great show, and congratulations to both of y'all.
Okay. You're gonna see a little bit of delay. I do want to let Aisha to at least give you the number that you can reach her on, because I don't see the number on the screen for her office. Okay.
Yes, the number to my office is 301.
I'm ready.
952 3500.
Let me say it one more time.
301 952 952
952
3500.
$3,500. Yeah, I have some information, but I just need to know how can I help some more people. And a lot of them are elderly. And I know previously they had to make calls themselves, but a lot of times the elderly, they're just too tired. But I would like to talk to you a little further. And like I said, I'll wait for your response, but definitely need to know how to handle. I know the Shannon Lee case was older, but there's still stuff that's going on. And I have some extra information, but I need to know what new, now that you're in place, what y'all doing to taking care of that type of situation. So I'm going to hang up. Love y'all, and y'all be safe out there. Love y'all. Miss y'all back home.
Okay, Lynette, thank you. We'll be answering your question. Thank you for calling in.
Okay, so what I was going to say is that, squatters can fall in a couple different categories. There are squatters who believe that they rightfully have a lease because someone else may have taken over a property that was abandoned or was foreclosed on, and so the banks have not taken it over yet and put it on on the market for sale. Mm-hmm. And so you have these very sophisticated individuals who will go in, spot those types of homes, take them over, and they will create their own leases to rent those properties out.
Get out of here.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And so sometimes there are people who are very innocent in the process. They think they have a valid lease. They've been paying their rent every month to someone who has no rights in that property. But unfortunately, those leases cannot be honored because the person who created those leases had no rights in that property. So we try to assist those individuals that are truly innocent victims, provide them with enough time so that they can move on to another location to live. But then we have those individuals who are just taking over properties that they believe are abandoned, and so we have enforcement powers there. Of course, the Department of Permits and Inspections also have enforcement powers, and we have our office has prosecuted those cases, and we will continue to do so. So if the caller has a specific issue, we are happy to look into it for her.
Okay, and just in case you didn't get the number correctly, what's the number it's on the screen now, guys. 301-952-3500. Okay, so back to our question regarding the Bill of Rights. And
so it's actually the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights. It's actually a Maryland statute, so it's not unique to Prince George's County.
Okay.
And there are, I think, aspects of the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights that the community questions often, and there are often bills in Annapolis to provide what we may consider more transparency in the process, and those bills have not been supported by the majority of the elected officials in the General Assembly. And so I think it would be very important for the community to meet with their state representatives to talk about the importance of having transparency and accountability in the system. So
you can look at the cashier requirement, so you can talk to them.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
And caller, I'm gonna pick you up in a minute. I want her to finish this question. I don't want her to get detoured again.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So that was the first. That was the answer to the first part. That we have to do a better job, I think, of educating our elected officials at the state level, because they have the power to make changes that they believe are important for the people of the state to ensure that there is transparency. But my job in my office is to hold officers accountable when they use excessive force, when we believe a criminal act has taken place. Again, we've recently indicted an officer, and we will continue to do our best to hold our officers accountable. We always say no one's above the law or below the law. You're there to enforce the law, and if you do so in a way that's not constitutional, my job is to hold you accountable, and we do so. We will do so effectively.
Okay, so I think the caller dropped. That's up to you guys. I just don't want to have to keep interrupting her. You're going to have to be willing to be patient and hold on a little bit. But to follow up with that in that steps, because your job is to hold them accountable. One of the questions was, what does that entail? Because they don't just want to hear the words that I'm going to hold them, but what type of steps does that
Well, we investigate these allegations when they are brought to our attention. We conduct independent investigations. We utilize the resources of a police use of force expert when we are investigating these cases. And then we present evidence before grand jury, and the grand jury determines whether or not to indict the case. And in the first case we brought in this administration, we were able to secure an indictment.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that because, often just looking across the country, a lot of people feel that too often these cases that if the jury is made of regular people, we look at like, how the heck did they get off with that? And it just don't make any kind of sense.
Well, you have to understand that in most of these cases, especially here in Maryland, most of the officers opt not to have a jury trial, but a bench trial. So it's a judge typically that's making the decision.
Okay. And the last question relating to that also goes along the lines. It was actually submitted by Kima Harris. She's the mother of Kevin Sneed. She wanted to know what constitutes a defendant being held on a no bond status or an unattainable bond, even though they have not been convicted of a crime. These actions ruins a person's job, their home, and their family, all before being convicted, and some end with acquittals. However, the person's life is already ruined. She feels that this isn't being innocent until proven guilty by law, and how is this being allowed? So for your girl Tasha purposes, and probably some of the viewers, if you could also answer what's the difference between a no bond status and unattainable. The caller is back. Can you hold that thought?
Okay. Sure.
Hang with your girl Tasha. Who's calling and where are you calling from?
Hello, I'm calling from Bowie, Maryland. This is Latasha Ward calling.
Hello.
Hi, Latasha Ward.
How are you?
I'm awesome. And Miss Braveboy says hi too.
Tell her I'm excited that she's implementing that program in reference to driving safe. Prince George's County, hopefully, other surrounding counties will catch on to it and do likewise.
Yeah, I think what Ms. Ward, first of all, Latasha, thank you for your advocacy for safe driving. Latasha lost a very good friend to, I believe it was a drunk driver. But far too many of our residents here are losing their lives or losing loved ones to impaired driving. In the past 6 months, we've lost over 50 people. Over 50 people have died on the roads here in Prince George's County as a result, for the most part, of impaired driving and unsafe driving. And so on April 27th, my office is launching a campaign along with many partners across the community called Drive Focus, Sober, and Safe. And that campaign is really about ensuring that our roads are safe, that people are not losing their lives, that people are staying focused on the roads, not being distracted by phones and radios and everything else, driving sober, meaning that they are not impaired by alcohol or drugs, and safe, ensuring that they're using their appropriate restraints, their seat belts, because so many accidents, many of them that have occurred, perhaps the accident couldn't have been avoided, but the fatality could have been avoided if the individual who was a passenger and in some cases a driver had simply used their seatbelt. And we had several cases where people have been ejected from vehicles as a result, and the injuries that are sustained are just, they're gut-wrenching. And so I just, really encourage everyone to drive safely. We will hold the at-fault drivers accountable. Recently, we secured a conviction against a 56-year-old grandmother.
Thank you for doing this.
Oh, yes.
Have to do something like this. Definitely appreciate
No,
that.
thank you. And I was going to say,
She gonna pick you. Thank you for calling in, Latasha. You can tune back into the show to hear the rest of her answer. Thank you so much.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Yes. Recently, we secured a conviction of a 56-year-old grandmother who was driving at an excessive speed, tried to negotiate a right-hand turn, and rammed her vehicle into a restaurant, killing a grandfather who was also a Boy Scout leader. You know, it was not her intention that day to kill anyone. But when individuals, decide that they're going to drive in an unsafe manner on the roadways, and someone is seriously injured or dies as a result of their actions, we have to hold them accountable because life is so precious. You know, we want people to respect life and to ensure that they conduct themselves in a way that will keep our community and our roads safe.
Okay, y'all know how your girl Tasha show is. It's just like me. I could bounce all around, and that's what we're doing. We're bouncing all around because when the calls come in, we got to take the comments. So we're going to get back to the other question, but since you brought up the drive, focus, sober, and safe, of course, we've heard of different areas putting in programs like this. What makes your program any different than what the community has heard before?
Well, it's not just a program. It's a campaign. It is a year-long campaign that we are launching in April. We are working with our state highway administration. We're working with our insurance partners and other law enforcement agencies to not just send the message, but visually demonstrate our commitment to safe driving. So our police department, as you might have seen, they have more checkpoints now that they are operating. And again, we are going to work with State Highway to get up signage on our highways that just speak to the issue of safe driving, just sending reminders. We are also partnering with our local radio stations, again, to send the message out through the airwaves. And I've reached out to a number of our religious leaders and asked that they include in their sermons discussion on safe driving. So we are going to attack this issue from every single angle. We're going to keep that message going in our community. But bottom line, if people choose to drive unsafe, choose to drive impaired, ultimately they come to us. And we do hold them accountable, and we have secured convictions in this area. Do we want to prosecute people for unsafe driving? No, that is not our goal. But our goal is to keep our residents safe. And if you are acting in a way that is unsafe and you take your chances on our roadways and something happens, I have no choice but to hold you accountable.
Because that family member doesn't have the intentions of paying for a funeral
that is correct.
Either. So,
listen to your girl, Tasha.
So I'm sorry. I had to go there.
That is correct.
So we are going to go back to Ms. Kima Harris' question. Do you need me to repeat it, or do you remember
it? Yes, if you can.
Okay, so Kima Harris, again, mother of Kevin Sneed, would like to know what constitutes a defendant being held on a no bond status or an unattainable bond, even though they have not been convicted of a crime. These actions ruins a person's life, their job, their home, and their family, all before being convicted, and some end with acquittals. However, the person's life is already ruined. Isn't it supposed to be innocent until proven guilty? How is this being allowed? And then I also asked for you to explain the difference between the two bonds.
So what I believe she means by unattainable bonds are bonds where the price point is set so high that the individual cannot afford to pay it. So they effectively are held without bond, or they end up being held because they can't afford to pay the bond. And then being held without bond means that the judge determines that there's no bond appropriate for that individual to be to be given, so that that person would be out in the community pre-trial. Now, the factors that are considered are, the nature of the charges. So if someone is charged with, let's say, murder or attempted murder or a very serious crime, that the judge will take that into consideration. In addition to that, the judge will take into consideration the evidence that has been collected so far. The judge will also take into consideration the danger or potential danger to the community, or the potential danger that that individual poses to themselves. In addition to that, they look at the danger to witnesses and to victims. And the judge also considers the previous record of that criminal record of the defendant, and will also look at their past history of appearing in court. So if they have failed to appear, let's say, in court previously, that is another factor that judges will take into consideration. So while we do in this country enjoy a presumption of innocence, judges can weigh the danger or potential danger to the community against the defendant's rights for liberty. And so we do our best in our office to avoid holding avoid asking for excessive bonds when it's not appropriate, or avoid asking for someone to be held without bond when it's not appropriate. But oftentimes it is appropriate. In many cases it is. And if someone is charged with very serious crimes, we owe it to our community to ensure the safety of all residents, the safety of the victims, and the safety of potential witnesses. But again, a judge makes those decisions after evidence is presented by both the defendant and my office, the prosecutor's office.
Awesome. Thank you for answering those. Now, I got a message from the control room that the caller that hung up actually wanted you to address diversion programs.
Yes. Okay. Well, I'm so happy you asked about that. I talked a little bit about the work we're doing around juvenile diversion, but in addition to the work we're doing there, we are also looking at ways to divert low-level offenders. And so we're putting together right now data from our office on all of the crimes that we try in district court, which really is the people's court. That's the lower level offenses are heard in district court.
Okay.
And we're looking at every single category of crime that the office has charged in the past year, and the outcomes. And from that, we are going to make some recommendations on expanding our diversion program so that more people have an opportunity to be diverted from the system. One of the areas that we are working on right now is diversion for prostitution, because we recognize that so many people who are involved in prostitution, many of them have been victims of human trafficking. Some of them have are abuse substances or are substance abusers, and many also have mental health issues and other issues. So we know that for those who get arrested for those charges, the charges of prostitution, we know or we believe that the most appropriate intervention is not prosecution and jail time, but really a more compassionate approach to addressing them and their issues. And so we're working on that now with a wonderful organization called Courtney's House. And so we're hoping to be able to roll something out later this year on that. But we are also looking at other types of offenses that most of them are considered quote unquote nuisance offenses.
Okay.
But they are problematic for the community. So you don't want people drunk on the side of the road in your community, but I also don't think that anyone really believes that jail is the appropriate place for these people either. So we're looking at ways of addressing really the underlying causes of these types of crimes and the charges that these individuals are getting, and to the best of our ability, pointing them in the pointing them in the direction of the resources that we believe they need in order to get back on track. And so that's our goal here. Again, being the top prosecutor isn't simply about prosecuting people. It's about keeping our community safe and employing the most effective strategies to do so.
Okay, so I see that we have logging on right now. Ms. Kima Harris, she's asking, and we've already addressed the question, actually, Kima, in the beginning part of the show, where you're now asking, what is the state's attorney's thoughts on corruption with the Prince George's County Police Department? I didn't know if you want to give her the brief answer again, but Kima, you can see her initial answer and the full answer by hitting the replay with it. So if you want to give a brief answer to it, it's up to you. She just logged on.
Okay. Well, hello. How are you? So when you say corruption, I think what I would say is that if there are allegations of corruption or allegations of excessive use of force, that every citizen and resident has the right and the ability to file a complaint. They can do so with the police department. They can also bring those complaints to our office. We will investigate them. And if we believe that criminal charges are appropriate, we will pursue them.
Okay, she said okay. So she'll do the replay on that. Thank you, Kima. All right, thank you. Now, some people in Prince George's County Public Schools got some questions for you. Well, it really all summed up to one question. And basically, it comes from the March 27th edition of the Washington Post, reported that school officials in Prince George's County violated district procedures or state laws in awarding contracts of more than $75 million. According to the state audits, the points that points to lack of oversight and deficiencies. One of the viewers and a runner of the PGCPS closed Facebook group, Mike Robinson, would like to know what legal actions are possible to bring justice and charge those responsible for the $75 million in PGCPS contracts that appear to be unaccounted for, and what do you think about the whole situation?
Well, let me just say about the whole situation with our Prince George's County Public Schools. I think that we all know that over the last several years, and I think this year is an exception. I think that, we have a new CEO who is doing her best to provide transparency. I think we have a board that is made up of individuals who, again, are demanding transparency and accountability. But all of us have inherited the past. It's what you do when you take office. And so I think we all know that there were several issues with our school system that have been highlighted in recent audits of our system. I can't speak specifically about anything with respect to the school, because obviously if in fact there are criminal violations, that is something that my office would have to handle. And so I can't go into detail on anything in particular, because I also have to be a neutral. My office has to be neutral when we evaluate potential allegations. But all I can tell you is that I do have a public integrity unit. We do take allegations of corruption seriously. We will do our own independent investigation, and if we believe we need additional resources, we will ask for additional resources to do a more thorough investigation. And if we believe that crimes have been committed, we won't hesitate to take action, because nothing is more important to me with respect to public service than to do so with integrity. And if we have to hold our counterparts, our colleagues accountable, that's what we'll do.
So with this, when you hear something like that in the news, does someone have to come and formally present charges, or just because you're knowing that it's going on, do you initiate, as a state's attorney office, just initiate to investigate wrongdoings, even if somebody doesn't formally present it to you?
Well, typically people will present information to us. Again, we have to be neutral in how we go about investigating, allegations. And so usually they come to us, maybe with some allegations, and then as part of our investigation, we may uncover other issues.
So you can't solicit it, because see, like I'm a union girl. And we always talk about people, they think that the stewards are not able to solicit grievances from the people who are being treated wrong. So it's a different ball game.
What I'm saying is that if I call on anyone, if you believe that there is corruption going on and you have evidence, or you believe you have evidence of such corruption, by all means, bring it to our office. I mean, we are interested in ensuring that everyone is held accountable. I think the question was, would we go out just by mere allegations and then go and
say, we're about to start a case right now. We're going to start an investigation on you right now.
Right. And I think we would not be in a position of being a neutral body if we were to do that. So that's not really how we operate. But again, if we obtain information that suggests that a crime has been committed, our job and our responsibility is to investigate and bring charges where appropriate.
Okay, so Mr. Derek Natalis Terry typed, there is very little oversight for a system that knows damn well this stuff been going on for years, and no exclusive to and it's not exclusive just to PG County Public Schools. People need to stop being afraid of being blackballed, or this will just continue. Thank you, Mr. Terry, for sharing. It sounds good to me. So let's get off a little bit off of some of the formal stuff. If people have more questions, you can always call in on 301-429-9247. Continue to share and invite. So I want to know, from the personal aspect of you, what has changed in your personal life because of you taking on this position?
Well, let's say, you know what, this position has really allowed me to really reflect, because it takes so much out of you. Every single day when I go into this office, I encounter something new, whether it is a new case, it is a meeting with a family of someone who lost their life, or a victim of a crime, which I often meet with, or if it's just meeting with staff to discuss issues surrounding the operations at the office, whether it's our budget or anything else. And so what I realize more than ever is that I need to take care of myself. So I have been on the treadmill a lot more. I've been walking my dogs a lot. I've been really trying to take care of myself physically, so that I can stay in shape mentally and make good decisions on behalf of the residents of this county. By all means, you should know this is a tough job, but it's one that I love, and one that I was prepared for, and one that I believe I've done a great job so far. But it does take a lot out of you. And so when you're in tough jobs, just like you're a superwoman as well. Just when we're in these tough jobs, and then we have other roles in our families and in our communities, we do have to take time for ourselves.
Okay, so you made some references to eliminating TV before we got started. Now, you want to share that with the viewers?
Well, I said I don't need TV. Because the stories I hear at the office are quite fascinating. I can tell you that we have, and even in, when we go through some of our more serious, difficult cases, one thing I can tell you is that we have a lot of criminals out here who make really, really dumb mistakes. And they are, even though the charges against them and the crimes that they committed are very serious. So I want to underscore the serious nature of it. But some of the ways in which we determine who the suspects are quite fascinating, because a lot of these individuals do things like drop their wallet at the scene of a crime, or more recently, jumped off of a 4-story building and broke their leg. I mean, it's fascinating what these individuals do, and so it provides for a lot of interesting conversation around the office. So much so, I find it more interesting than anything I've seen on TV. But again, this is not TV. This is real life, and these are real people who've committed serious offenses that we are holding accountable. But again, all the drama you want to find is in the state's attorney's office in Prince George's County.
Okay, she don't have nothing on CSI, guys. Is what she's saying there. So I see something that says officers to Kima. I'm not sure what that's in reference to about the officers too. That threw me off when I saw that. Where I was thinking, what with your with the kids? Okay, the community. A lot of people express that of course, the police relationships in the community, that people don't trust each other. What do you see the state's attorney office doing to help build back that trust between not only the law enforcement and the community, but also, I guess, even with elected officials who people feel like they're abandoning the community?
Well, I mean, I think in my role, again, we are there to hold everyone accountable, both residents and when they break the law, and also our police officers when they violate the rights of our people. And so I think the community, knowing that they have a state's attorney who's willing to do that, who will stand up, who will speak truth to power, who's not afraid to take on these fights, I think is important. But in addition to that, I must say that our police department is very engaged with the community. Each of our police districts have advisory councils, and so they are engaged with community leaders. A lot of our officers are also mentors to young people in our community. And so I think in many ways, the police officers are doing their best to reach out, but you do have some bad apples. I mean, that's the reality. And I think,
used that word a couple of weeks ago. Okay.
Yeah, we do. I mean, and I think they will admit it too. And so really the question is, when we recognize that someone is a bad apple, do we sweep it under the rug? Do we pretend that they don't exist? Or do we address it head on? And I say let's address it head on. In fact, in the most recent case that we indicted with the police officer, it was two of his fellow officers that provided the evidence we needed in order to indict him. And so I would say that, again, there are issues in our police department. There are issues in pretty much every institution probably in our county. But I think that is progress. When you see individuals holding each other accountable, I think that is progress. So I think they should be applauded for that. But again, we will still work closely to make sure that every officer is held accountable if they make a mistake.
So is there anything in addition to the advisory councils and maybe the police mentoring some people, kind of like what you have with the diversion programs? Are there any other type of community gatherings or something? And if so, how do people become aware of it? Because it seems like a lot of people are not aware of them.
So we have what's called Community in the Courthouse, and we meet every second Tuesday, or no, I'm getting that wrong. Fourth Tuesday. Sorry, the fourth Tuesday of the month, and that provides an opportunity for residents to come to the courthouse, get their questions answered, discuss important issues that are impacting their communities, and then hear from our law enforcement partners. At our first meeting, we had our sheriff, Melvin High, was there. I think at our next meeting, based on some of the questions that came up at our second meeting, I think at our next meeting, we will invite our police partners to come out to address some of those issues. I think there were some issues with ATVs, and now that the weather is breaking, those ATVs that are on our streets and our sidewalks and causing a lot of problems in our community is something that we have to work together to address.
Let me tell you, I was amazed a couple of weeks ago coming back down from Brandywine Shopping Center back home on that stretch of 301. Oh my God, it was like 20 of them, all with their lights out at night.
Yeah.
I'm
very
like,
dangerous.
what in the world are you thinking? It's bad enough you out there, but you out there driving with your lights out at night too. It's just crazy.
It's unbelievable, and it is a big problem. Parts of our county are affected more than others. I know that the southern part of our county experiences that a little bit more than other areas, but I mean, no part of our county is immune to the ATV issue, and so we're working with our police partners to try to come up with a solution, and so. But yeah, so there are issues like that we work on every single day. But I can tell you that's one that, I just really want to get my arms around it because those individuals just cause so much concern for our residents, for pedestrians, for people who are driving their cars, Unbelievable.
Okay, so you recently had an event yesterday?
Yes, I had my...
Oh, sorry, got a line one
call.
Sure. Hanging with your girl Tasha, who's calling, and where are you calling from?
Tasha, how you doing? This is Derek Nathanius Terry, calling from Baltimore.
Oh, I said Nathaniel. Hey, Nathanius.
I don't know what you said, but I didn't catch the beginning of the show. So how you doing, Aisha Braveboy?
Wonderful, Mr. Terry. How are you?
I'm doing fine. What I want to know is the school to prison pipeline.
Yes.
Are you working? Well, let me just go from the beginning. As I see things happening in Charles County, I live in Charles County. I know sometimes things can go into PG County or the opposite. Are you working in collaboration with the state's attorney office here, the sheriff's department here, to try to put together some type of joint effort to reduce the school to prison pipeline?
Well, we have not yet reached out to our partners, and thank you for saying that, our partners in Charles County. However, we have reached out to our local partners, the local law enforcement agencies here, as well as our school system and a couple of our nonprofits that work with young people to develop alternatives to incarceration and to prosecution for our young people. So once we have established our program, I will be happy to reach out to Charles County, and we also plan to reach out to Carl Racine over the District of Columbia, because a lot of our students are transient, and so they come from DC, they'll come to Prince George's County, or they'll move down to Charles County, or we have students from Charles County coming up to Prince George's County, and they take with them certain issues. And so I think it is important for us to have to work collaboratively with our partners. And so thanks for bringing that up. And I'll add Mr. Barry to my list of partners to reach out to.
Okay, Mr. Derek Nathanius Terry, thank you for calling in.
Y'all have a good one.
You too, sweetheart. Okay, your event that you had.
Yes, so I had my third annual Women's History Celebration reception yesterday, and it was amazing. The keynote speaker was Elijah Cummings.
Oh, wow.
And I can tell you it was such an honor and joy to have him there. Of course, he received a standing ovation. And one of the things that he said, and it touched me so deeply, was that he said to my parents that I am serving the people of my county the way that they served me. And he's, they disciplined me. Yes, they did. But they did so in a compassionate way. They gave me a second chance when I needed it. But they also understood the importance of order in their house. And so he was right in so many ways, that is how I run this office, in a way that is compassionate, that is understanding of issues that people might have. But bottom line, our house here in Prince George's County must be in order. And so if people are committing offenses for which we believe provide an unsafe environment for our community, we are going to take them out of our community. But for those individuals who need a second chance, we are going to provide that second chance for them as well. So I'm equally as committed to keep our community safe as I am to giving people an opportunity to get it right.
Okay, thank you for tuning in, Lakeisha Jefferson. I got a watch party question.
Okay.
I got different questions. Okay. All right, going back, we have a Jonathan Newton. Mm-hmm. Given the huge adverse impact of wrongful arrest and subsequent prosecutions of an innocent citizen, would you be willing to support legislation requiring a mandatory minimum sentence for police officers that are found to have placed a patently false statement within a police report?
Well, I would say this. If an individual files or provides information that they know to be false, we have ways of holding them accountable, and we will do so. So I don't know that we need to have a mandatory minimum. I don't believe in most cases we should have mandatory minimums across the board. If we start opening the door of mandatory minimums, that's then the legislature, I believe, is going to look at it not just with respect to police officers, but they're going to try to have more mandatory minimums when it comes to residents who might commit offenses. And so I think that each case should be looked at in its own merit. And again, if people are lying, filing false statements or making false statements, we will, and we have, and we will continue to hold them accountable.
Okay. Kima Harris has, why is there over-policing in lower income areas where mostly black people reside?
I think that's a good and valid question, and that's one that we, are going to look at. I mean, one of the things coming into this office I recognize is that the office didn't keep a lot of data. And so now we are developing that capacity to create data and also mapping so we can see where these arrests are being made. And I'll know where my the majority of my prosecutions are occurring and which neighborhoods are being affected, so that we can look at that and determine whether or not there's over-policing in areas or under-policing in other areas, and how we, potentially, if there are biases to certain zip codes in our county. But all of that is based on information that is provided through data. And because historically the office did not conduct such data and do such mapping, we don't have a history of that. But from my time on forward,
started something. Okay.
Yeah, we're moving forward. Now that takes a little time to put together, as you can imagine. Mm-hmm. And the office had one person really doing data, and we currently have just that one person. But we have tasked them with, a number of jobs to do around data collection, and they're getting some help from some other folks in the office who have an expertise or an interest in data. So we're doing our best because we want to be a transparent office. But again, that wasn't a part of the infrastructure with me coming in. And we're in the middle of a budget cycle right now. So it's not like I can create money to hire new people to do that job. But we are doing our best with what we have.
So is there anything in place with the data collection now where the community can perhaps give tips to direct you towards that type of information?
Sure. And, we have met and we will continue to meet with community groups and leaders. One of the best ways to provide that input is at our monthly community and the courthouse meetings. Mm-hmm. But they can also, email the office. They can also send us information through our social media. We're on Facebook. It's PGSAO News.
PGSAO News. Okay.
We are also on Twitter. But I would say that if you do send us a message, if you can use our message boards, like the direct message, just because I don't want it to get lost in the feed. But if you do have suggestions for us, we want to hear from you. But you can always come to our meetings. You can write letters. You can email us. You can do whatever you need to do to get the message. But we plan to put together a comprehensive package of data. So we're working on that, and we hope to be able to release that in September.
Okay, so it's going to be available to the public.
Yeah, so we're putting together what's called the State of Justice, which will be an annual event where we will talk about all aspects of our criminal justice system, and we will provide data and reports on the work that our office is doing.
Okay, so that made me think of a question that came up during my previous segment, but I don't know where to go. Hold on. I'm going to come back to that. Kiana Johnson is asking, are you willing to implement restorative justice training for your staff? And can you explain more what restorative justice training is for those that don't know?
So, for people who don't know, I mean, I think part of what we have to do in our justice system and as prosecutors in the 21st century, if we are to employ, I think, smart crime fighting tools, what we have to know is that our job simply is not to prosecute. It is also to provide for meaningful ways for people to rehabilitate themselves and to be held accountable. But that's not always through prosecution. And so sometimes meaningful diversion opportunities that makes the victim whole, acknowledges the wrongdoing of the defendant, but then gives that person an opportunity to restore themselves in the community. To make the appropriate apologies to the victim and attempt to, provide that victim with the resources that they may have deprived them of through that process, but also to learn how to be better citizens in this county. And we absolutely believe that that is a strategy for us to keep our community safe. And we have begun to look at, we've started it really right now with our juveniles because we had more data there. But we are also, again, as I mentioned earlier, we are looking at every single case that we've charged over the past year. Most of that was under the prior administration because I've only been in office for a few months now. But we're looking at every single case that we charge in ways that we can divert those cases and look at restorative justice practices to address those cases. And so I'm right in line with what Kiana has mentioned. And yes, that is something that our office is doing.
Okay, awesome. We got another one that came in from... hold on, the thing got me stuck. Jonathan Newton says, we have mandatory minimums for folks who fill out a handgun application with false statements. Isn't it reasonable to expect as harsh a punishment for an officer of the law who fills out sworn police reports with false statements? Can you elaborate on why officers should be held at a lesser standard with your answer?
I don't believe that officers should be held at a lesser standard. What I believe is I don't believe in mandatory minimums, period. I think mandatory minimums, they work against justice. They don't recognize the unique circumstances of the cases and the victims and the defendants that come before the court. And so I'm not a supporter of mandatory minimums, and that's across the board.
Okay. All right, hope that answered your question, Jonathan. Okay, so now, Aisha, there's a lot of young boys and girls out here that look up to you.
Yes.
So what would you say to them about preparing themselves for the future, and what steps to take if they want to be state's attorney one day?
Well, I can say... watch what you do and say on social media, because that can and will stay with you for the rest of your life, okay? So it's really important that we present our best selves. I would say to be good students. Take this time right now. Your one and only job really is to get your education, so get it. And pay attention to your parents because your parents love you. They care about you. They want what's best for you. And I get it because I was a child once. And I know that sometimes, I felt like my parents just didn't understand. They were just too old school. But now what I really appreciate the fact that they didn't let me just do whatever I wanted to do, because I stayed focused on school. I got my education. And I was able to live out my dreams. And right now I'm living a dream because I've always wanted to serve people. Not necessarily this office, but just being able to serve people and make a difference in people's lives. So I would say to you, figure out what your passion is, what your purpose is, and live for that. And don't live for others. Live for yourself. Be smart about it. And again, live your best life by presenting your best self every day.
All right, now it's winding down, and I want to get two questions in here. Well, one is saying, what are the plans for more housing for domestic violence victims and children?
Yes, so we are actually working right now. In our office, we have a coordinating committee called the Not One Campaign Against Domestic Violence, which I started on the campaign trail, and now I brought that into the office. And in October, we are going to be hosting a meeting that discusses just that, housing, creating more housing opportunities. We have also approached the members of our county council to put together a task force, which the state's attorney's office would lead. We will work with our other elected officials, will work with the banking community, the real estate community, and also our partners at the Department of Housing at the federal level of HUD, so that we can look at opportunities to grow housing in this county and be able to provide long-term housing for victims of domestic violence. This is something, as you know, is near and dear to me. Personally, my family was affected by domestic violence, and the one thing I can tell you is that most people don't leave their violent situations because they don't have another place to go. And I want these victims to become survivors and stay the course through the prosecution of their abuser. But in order for me to do that, we've got to be able to provide them with long-term housing.
All right, and I'm going to get this last question in control room. I'm sorry. And it might be a little bit too early to ask this question because you only got 90 days in.
Yes.
But basically, what's next for Aisha Braveboy? Some people have concerns that people change positions over and over again. So if you get somebody in that's doing something right, they jump and they trying to use this to hop to another position. What's your plans? Are you looking at running for county executive, a governor one day? If so, how early, how soon? When will your job be done as state's attorney?
My job will be done as state's attorney when the citizens and residents of this county have determined that my job is done. I love this job. What am I going to do after the first 90 days? 90 more days, and 90 more days after that. This is, in my opinion, because I know every job in this county. I know what it takes for every job in this county. It has to be. It's the most powerful job in the county. We determine people's liberty, whether or not they're going to go home that day. The cases we pursue, we will determine whether or not someone feels like they got justice that day. The decisions we make really do affect people's lives on a daily basis. I can think of no other job that has that level of responsibility. And we also protect the constitutional rights of our citizens and residents. So this job is all encompassing. I can't imagine doing anything else. In fact, since I've taken this job, I don't even remember my other jobs because this job is so all-encompassing, and I love it. I go to work every single day. I'm happy, even with the challenges I face in the office and the challenges that we face as an office. It is so rewarding to be a part of an institution that could truly provide justice and truly keep people safe. You know what? The police arrest people every day on our streets. But nothing goes into that courtroom unless we say so. That is true power, and it's very humbling. I can tell you it's a very humbling job. This is not one of those jobs you're like, well, I'm the law. No. This is a very humbling job. But it's a very serious job and one that I take very seriously and that I love.
All right, so there you have it from our Prince George's County State's Attorney, Miss Aisha Braveboy. That's another episode of Hanging with Your Girl Tasha. Hopefully, other officials who are in office take me up on being able to come back and talk about their last 90 days. And maybe she'll be back in her next 90 days so that we can talk about it. And for that now, guys, I'll see you back next Monday, 5:30 Eastern Time, when we have Miss Rosemary Harrison on. She's an author. She has a strong story about suicide. And she's champion for peace as well as nonviolence. So look for Miss Rosemary Harrison next week. And I just want to thank you for returning.
Thank you. This is awesome. Thank you, Tasha.
See you later.
Wonderful hanging with you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.